This is the Crazy God Story Podcast. I'm Chris. Today I'm here with Tyya Johnson. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Awesome, man. She's got quite the story. She had a pretty rough childhood. Things were really challenging. And then just God got hold of her life. She was praying, seeking God, and some really amazing things happened. I think you got a lot of healing and things like that in some places that were really hurting and broken. And man, you want to just kind of take us through some of that stuff? Just go back to what you feel is important.
Well, I think that us as humans go through things in life, period. We have times we fall off the bike with the Lord. We have times we hit these rough patches. And I think that's a lot of people. And I think people don't understand that it doesn't take much to get back on because the Lord is kind of waiting on you in a sense. So
Because he has a lot of grace and mercy for us, huh?
yes. So even in knowing the Lord, let's say for most of your life when you're raised in church, so you know who the Lord is, but you want to be the wild teen. You want to think you're grown, you want to do this, you want to do that, and you become a product of your environment. My sister's calling me.
Oh, yeah, it happens.
Yeah, so you'll always kind of be like in a weird space, like trying to figure it out. Stuff always happens that humbles you and kind of makes you crawl back to the Lord, because when you're at the bottom, you can only look up sometimes. It's like,
yeah. How much do you think those things that happen, a lot of times we're like, man, why do bad things happen? But how much do you think those things that have happened make you realize how much you actually need the Lord?
It's like being let's say the disgruntled teenager. You're wild. Your parents could tell you, my mom was big on that, about having bad influence friends, about doing this. The Lord knows what you're doing. You're held accountable to the Lord now. You're this and that. You're doing wrong is never going to go your way, and you're always going to fall on your face. You're going to realize that the hard way, because you're hard. Like, it just is what it is. So the crazy part of it is I've always learned it the hard way, because that's always been who I was. But as a kid, we always knew to seek the Lord,
right,
no matter what. Pray to the Lord. He's always listening, even if you feel like he's not, even if you feel alone. That's kind of like a trick of the enemy. The Lord's always there. And my mom has always instilled that in us, kind of like, no matter what you're going through, we will always be like the prodigal son, in a sense. And it's kind of like, you're welcome back, but you have to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. But so kind of when I was reading your story, like what you told me, like things started really, really hard for you. Like you know, like you got this just raw end of the deal from the day you were born, and you kept like, it seems like you would follow God, on and off, and now you're at this place in your life where God really, I mean, like it almost seems like, from what I read, like, and I want you to go into some of this stuff, like God really worked to keep bringing you back to himself, even though you kept running away from him. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So start from like, what were kind of the circumstances of, like, from the beginning of your life, kind of go into kind of your start, because it was really like challenging. Your mom was, pretty rough, and it gave you a rough start. So kind of go into that a little bit and talk about how, because I know you walked away and came back, and it was really God kept pulling you back. So go into some of that stuff.
So as a kid, I didn't learn who my real father was till I was 10, but the father whom named me got murdered when I was 5. So
Wow.
she's my sister that's 2 years older than me, father, right? His name is Tyrone. We don't have
extremely crazy memories of him because we were so young. My older
Right.
sister that's 6 years older than us does, but him and my mom, he was a pimp and he had a harem of women and they were involved in this big time. And my mom was like what you would call his main chick. And with me, she told me the truth when I was 10 because I kept questioning, why do I look so different? Why do I look so different from everybody in my family? Oh, it's because you're light skinned, because my mom was like a darker skinned Spanish woman, and my said father was a black man. So it was kind of like, why do I feel so different? Everything's so different. My mom always would say the truth will set you free. So when she felt like I was old enough, she told me the full truth as much as she could without being vulgar. Let's go there. So it was
Okay.
basically like, Tyrone's not your father. He's Jaya's father. And we thought he was your father until you were born. And you came out looking white with blonde
Yeah.
hair. And it's like, you're not it. And he took on the responsibility of, okay, Liz, we don't want them to know the truth. So I'm going to give her my name. He signed the birth certificate. We're just never going to tell her.
Okay.
That was his theory, even though he was the person he was. It's like he loved us. I would say I don't have any. My mom went through a lot of bad things with him, but I don't have direct memories of anything bad going
Right.
on because
Okay.
I was too young, you know.
Yeah. So you grew up, always kind of wondering why, you look different, there obviously was, some differences there. Yet 10 years old, your mom says, hey, okay, so this isn't your dad. So you don't know who your dad is. And at that point, how did that affect you to all of a sudden, for the first 10 years of your life, this man that you thought was your father, that your mom and him, everyone had been telling you this is your dad, to have that like ripped away from you? Like, how did that feel? How did that affect your life?
It clicked. Like that's why something feels off. Like something's missing with me. But it made me angry towards my mom because it wasn't fair that my older sister knows her dad. Jaya knows her dad. He was the one that passed.
Right.
She told me, I don't remember who this man is. I
Wow.
have an idea, but I don't remember. I'm not going to lie to you. My little sister, she's 10 years younger than me. She was married to him at the time, and he was on and off drug addict. A lot of our turmoil in our house was really because of him and her dysfunctional certain way of how she was raised and her stuff. So it was kind of like her answer was, an earthly father is going to hurt you and never give you what your heavenly father will. I'm sorry I can't give you answers. There's nothing I could do. But as a
Wow.
young teenager and a kid, it's like, this ain't fair. It's only me. So when everybody wanted to escape the household because of the drama, I didn't have a family to go to. My older sister went with her dad. My second sister went with her dad's family. I was there. I was stuck there. So my
Wow.
little sister was a baby. She's 10 years younger than me. So there's a lot she kind of missed out on, the craziness um of a lot of things, like as far as like with her dad and my mom and
Yeah.
all that stuff like that.
Wow.
So it was like I became very wild in a sense.
Yeah.
And anytime we got into it, it was just like, this ain't fair. This ain't
Yeah.
fair. I'm the only one. So I'm never going to know because of your irresponsible ways, in a sense. And it's just like that's it. That's the only answer. There's no other answer. So in us being raised in church and her letting us
Hold,
always know.
let me ask you this real quick. So you said, okay, so there's a shift in there somewhere, and I want to get to that real quick so that we can, for the continuity and stuff. So your mom had, been in, a prostitute before you were born and stuff, and there was a point where that changed, right? So
Yes.
when was it that it changed, and how much did she really get away from like that lifestyle, because and the things that are associated with that?
My mom, when she was pregnant with me, she left my sister's dad
Okay.
because certain ways he had was spiraling out of control. So she
Okay.
left. And he stood up for trying to be what was right, but he acquired like a drug habit, and that spun out of control.
And
So
this
my
is the guy who
mom,
was a pimp, right?
yes.
So he
So
was
my mom,
so he was real. I'm sorry. I
he
just
was
want to
real. He
understand
was
something.
the real deal.
So he was a really bad guy, but at the same time, he's going, I want to be moral. I want to be a good father, but
Yes.
he's
Yes.
okay. Okay, great. Well,
Like
not
it's his
great, but
fault.
I just want to understand. Okay.
Yeah. So it's weird because I think people, they don't personally know people. People can, in my mind, people can have a bad thing with them, but it's funny that he took on his bad ways and took responsibility for it. It was like, don't let the girls know that this is
Wow.
what we were doing. You know, I'm gonna sign the birth certificate. She's gonna be my daughter. Don't tell her the truth.
Wow.
Hard to hide because they look at me and then look at them. If you've
Right.
seen them, you'll get what I was saying. But that was in his mind rational enough. And him and my mom, she left him and winded up getting saved
Okay.
and didn't have nothing to do with that life. But she would still let him
Awesome.
pick us up, see
Okay.
us. He would come and he was always hey, I'm here. He got new bikes for us, new toys for us. He was like the fun guy, like nothing was ever a weird situation with us. My mom said she always feared that when we were older, he would try to do that to us. She didn't never know. My mom been gone for 8 years. She never knew that for certain. She said in her mind, her paranoia made her feel that way. But
Okay.
he never acted weird towards us in that way. He always,
Okay.
that's all I remember. But then again, he got killed when I was 5. But what I remember of him was good memories.
Okay. All right. So you're in church with your mom. Was it like a kind of an on again, off again thing, or was it pretty constant? And what was the rest of your childhood like at that point? So the guy that you thought was your dad, he dies when you're 5.
Yeah.
By the time you're 10, your mom finally tells you, you've been in church. So kind of what was that like? Was it consistent or
Well, my mom fully gave her life to the Lord, and in her normal human self still had dysfunctional ways. So she always was a bad picker of men. My mom has always been a bad picker of men. She used to say it was like a generational curse. She
okay?
will pray about it, but it was always like she could never get right in that department. But my mom, we started going to a church that was really strict in their rules, and my mom got really judged off of walking in there with 3 daughters that look completely different.
Wow.
So she always got the side eye, like, who's this whore kind of, and my mom felt that.
Wow.
So my mom started going to the Bible Institute and learning the word really on her
Okay.
own. And when she would challenge the leaders of the church, she kind of got like kicked out in a sense. And like fast forward, we found out that said pastor had affairs with women in church. It was like a bunch of
Wow.
crazy stuff. But my mom never gave up on fighting for serving the Lord. So she
Wow.
instilled that in all of us
That's
through raising us in a weird dysfunctional way because of her having the bad choice in
yeah.
picking men for herself.
That's
She
that's
never shook that.
that's really remarkable because so many people have a bad experience with like church and they attach that to God, not realizing that
Yes.
people are messed up, flawed, imperfect, and so that's fantastic because I know that it was hard for you. You had a hard journey getting to
Yeah.
where you're at now, which is a much better place, and we're going to get there. I'm excited to hear,
Yeah.
all the stuff in between, but that's I've got to give props to your mom. That takes a lot
Yeah.
of really like even being an imperfect
It's
person,
hard.
like you said, that she still made mistakes, still knew God and knew that those people didn't represent him. Is that about right?
Yes.
And
She
I
was very clear on that.
yeah, and I love
People
that.
hurt people. It's not the
Yeah.
Lord. But people are going to be people. People are going to give
Wow.
false testimony. People are not going to be, they're going to have a religious spirit. And
Yeah,
she was big on calling people out because of her going to the Bible Institute. It was like, oh, I know the word. Don't
man,
play with me. She was
I
that person. So Like she was the person waiting at the door with the Bible when the Jehovah Witness knocked on the door. Oh, let me talk to you and preach to you about who Christ really is, and they walk off. They wouldn't
Yeah.
even want
Wow.
to. We will find it hilarious, like, oh stuff, here she goes. She about to get with the Jehovah Witnesses, and they stop coming to our house after a while. Like,
So
don't
this
even
is
go back to
so
church.
your mom kind of, it reminds me of the story in the Bible where Jesus is at the house of a Pharisee, right? One of the
Yeah.
religious elite. And this woman who had been a prostitute came in and anointed his feet with oil, or his, was, cleaning his feet with her tears. And the Pharisee, he thought to himself, if this guy was really a prophet, if this Jesus guy was really a prophet, he would know what kind of woman this was and wouldn't want anything to do with her. And Jesus basically, he just says, look, if you've got two servants and a master forgives, they both owe their master a debt. One of them owes $50, the other owes, $50 billion, and he forgives both of them. Which one of them is going to love their master more? And the guy's like, well, the one that, owed the most. And Jesus is like, right. He who is forgiven much loves much. And this woman had this close connection with Jesus because she realized that God loved her and had forgiven her for her past. And this Pharisee, this guy that had this religious, I'm all, look at me, with all his money, all his degrees, all of his, position and all that, he didn't really know God. And it sounds to me like your mom, I'm not just saying because, she was a prostitute and this woman was, but like had that really knew God and realized how much she was loved. And even though, it sounds like even though your mom was still imperfect, she was still going, God loves me. And
Yes.
so how much of an impact did that have on you actually with all the garbage that you went through that we'll get into and stuff? Did that affect you still loving God and knowing God now instead of being just a statistic that walked away?
Well, sidebar, her favorite song was Alabaster Box by CC
I
Winans.
love it.
And she would cry every time she heard that song
Wow.
out of joy, though, because she's like, I'm forgiven. And fast forward, like she started to preach in the street ministry, and where we lived, there was a lot of prostitutes on Broadway. It's in Camden, New Jersey. So
Wow.
she would be out there preaching in English and Spanish. She would translate times, and she would point to them and preach to them. Jesus healed me. Jesus can heal you too. And they'd be out there crying and just like, you know how sometimes life is crazy and
Yeah.
it's like people are giving up because they're so battered and broken. And she would tell them, no, I've been there.
And they think they're beyond redemption.
Right. Yes.
Wow.
So she, in being weirded out by church and kind of victimized in a sense, because it happened, different things happened in a couple churches we went to growing up that my mom was like, y'all have religious spirits here. And when she would call it out, she became like, you need to go. You're starting a problem.
Did they ever tell her she had like a Jezebel spirit?
No.
Okay.
It was kind of like, why are you causing problems? And she's like, biblically, if you're supposed to go off what the Bible's saying, this is not what's going on here.
You're supposed to love people well.
So she's, like she tried to make sure, she would tell us, if it's not biblical, it ain't sound. I don't care what nobody says, a pastor, a deacon, or whoever.
Amen.
If it is not biblical, it's not right. People will hurt you. The Lord never will. She instilled that in all of us, like big time. So even with the craziness that was our house, we always knew that. We never got away from it either, because we've all have our own stories. Me and my sisters, of a rough path that we entered, and then it's like smoothing itself out as we get older and gain more understanding for ourselves.
Wow.
Like being the wild child and then calming down, because you realize at the end of the day, true happiness comes with truly serving the Lord. All these things that you can obtain in life is not going to bring you true happiness. You're always it's always like some form of sadness or despair. You can't shake it.
Wow.
And you only feel set free when you're truly serving the Lord and seeing Jesus for the comforter that he is, and the Holy Spirit he blesses us with. Like it's crazy.
So I want to know, like, when your mom was talking to other women that were, that were prostitutes, did any of them ever come out of that because of your mom?
I know they would come up for prayer
Yeah.
and get saved. In the street meetings that they preached, they went from different parts of the town.
Yeah.
So Camden is very small. They have a really high crime rate because it's really small. So she would be in North Camden, South Camden,
Wow.
downtown, East Camden. Like they would be everywhere because they were a traveling ministry that preached on the street to
Wow.
people. They set up hot dog stands. They had bikes for kids for Christmas. They had drives. They would give people gifts. The poor people, they would feed homeless. They would give clothes. Like they were doing what it seemed like ministry should be.
They were doing the kind of stuff that Jesus did. Your mom,
Yeah.
it strikes me, your mom is the kind of person that Jesus associated with, that the Pharisees looked down on. Her life was transformed through her relationship with God, through Jesus. And then she went out and did what was done for her. And she
Yeah.
wasn't, like, what I'm getting is that she wasn't a perfect person. She was still,
Mhm.
had a lot of, mess and stuff, but she knew the healing power of God and brought that love from Jesus to people that needed it. That the
Yes.
religious Pharisees that threw her out of the church wouldn't.
Wouldn't do.
Wow, man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. We are, as Christians, as followers of Jesus, we're called to love on people like that. One of my favorite pastors
Yes.
is this guy named Chuck Smith. Back in
Mhm.
the and he's passed away now, but back in the 70s, he was in Southern California. He started ministering to hippies and surfers, and these were people that were like on all kinds of drugs, all kinds of everything,
Right.
didn't have homes. Um, when we think of like radical sin, like they were going at it full bore. That was their
Yeah.
pursuit. And so God had put it on his heart. And he's this guy from this you know, three-piece suit and tie kind of church. And God burdened his heart for these people. And so he went out and started ministering to them. They were getting saved. And I was listening to him one time, and he's telling the story about these surfers came in. They had a brand new carpet in their church. These surfers had come in straight from the beach, covered in sand and stuff. And after the service, his church leaders came up to him and they're like, "Hey, these guys are, we've got this brand new rug that these guys are ruining. You've got to tell them to clean up." So he ripped the rug out of the church, the brand new rug, ripped it out down to bare floor. And then they didn't like that. And so, he kept bringing these people in that were dirty and smelled funny and stuff like that. And eventually his leaders came to him and said, "Hey, it's us or them." And he said, "It's been nice knowing you. Have a nice life." Like that
That's like
was,
the scripture in Mark. I've desired mercy, not
yeah,
sacrifice. I didn't come for the righteous, I came for the sinner.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly what it is.
And that was his heart, and that was something God did in him, though, because originally he had that Pharisee attitude, these dirty hippies and surfers, and God had led him and his wife down to the beaches in Southern California, and as he was watching these people, the Holy Spirit just broke his heart, and
Mhm.
so yeah. So your mom was involved in like this street preaching ministry that was really
Yeah.
ministering to people who were broken, hurting, and lost, and you were seeing that. So you guys grew up, you said, in a lot of poverty. You didn't have much, but you had God. Lots of sin and lots of other stuff going on, but you still had God and kept going back to that. So let's go back to, you find out that the guy that you thought was your dad wasn't your dad. You're getting into your teenage years, and kind of what was that like for you?
Um,
What was kind of some of the stuff that you went through, and kind of some of the because you had kind of went back and forth between God and the world, or something like that. So kind of go through that.
so in the teenage years, my mom, when she had my little sister, I was 10. So her husband was always on and off drugs.
Okay.
He was a heroin addict. My mom would call him a seasonal junkie because during the winter he wouldn't get high because my mom would kick him out. Every time he steals something, kick him out.
So when he got a nice place to stay, he can do drugs
Yeah.
when he's
So,
out on the street. No.
right.
Okay.
So when
Wow.
he was clean, he was actually a good guy. It was weird. Like he was a good husband. He worked. He provided for the house. He helped her. When he was out there, he was out there. He was stealing all our stuff. He was like, it was like, these are the reasons our electric will be cut off. Like he was always stealing, like always doing something because he was a drug addict. So My oldest sister left to go be with her dad to have a better life in the state of Maryland because she just couldn't, she just wanted better for herself. And her dad had a ministry of his own in Maryland. He was also a recovering addict from New York and moved to Maryland and opened um, a ministry of his own and was a pastor of his own church. So my sister left to Maryland to live with him while she was in high school. She was 16. So she left when I was 10.
Okay.
When my sister Jaya left when she was 14 and I was 12. She left to go live with her aunt because she started acting out and my mom really couldn't control her. She was more of the wild child that was just like more loud and rambunctious about whatever my mom was doing. She was confronting her about it. And then, so a lot of stuff was kind of like for attention though, in a sense, because of my
Yeah.
mom being married to him, acting like since this is my husband, I have to stick beside him because that's what God expects me to do. Like, so she left to live with her aunt that she always had in her life. She was always good to her. She was good to all of us too. And my sister winded up excelling more living with her. I didn't have nowhere to go because I didn't have a
Right.
dad's family to go to. So at one
Right.
time she sent me to Puerto Rico to live with my grandma. I hated it. I didn't hardly know no Spanish. Everybody was weird. They were looking at me like, who the hell is this white girl here? Like this is just what you encounter when you go somewhere, you're in the country there, and they know who you are. They know you're not from there. These people know, they could tell you who you are by your eyes, what part of the family you're probably from just by the way your eyes are shaped. Like this is
Wow.
how nosy the community is because they're small and they've been generations there. Like, so if you're an outsider coming in, it's like, who's this? That's her daughter. She don't even look like, why she look like this? Why? And it was just weird. But she sent me to live with my grandma. 6 weeks, I'm like, I don't want to be here. I boohooed to my grandma. My grandma sent me back and she's like, she don't want to be here. I was basically, that was around 7th, 8th grade year. When I came back, it's when you get introduced to smoking weed, hanging with your friends and running the street, walking around town and just hanging. We had some of our cousins did that too. And it was just like, I ain't trying to be a part of this house. I'm out of here. So by the time 9th grade year came, I met my son's father, which was my high school sweetheart.
Okay.
And he was very controlling and jealous. And I took that as he cared for me because I believe dysfunctionally that was his way he showed love too. But I didn't know how to receive love like normal almost, like we were used to seeing so
Yeah.
much dysfunction, not really realizing when something's not healthy. I would get mad that my mom would try to keep me from him. He's the only person that acts like he loves me. You over here with your problems with your crackhead husband and this and that. Like, I was that teenager. So with him, he was like my first real boyfriend and all that. And we were like madly in love with each other. And it was like, if you get pregnant, my mom will probably let you move in. I got pregnant on purpose to
Wow.
get out of my mom's house. And we were like inseparable, but he kept me away from my friends because they're whores, my cousins because they're this and that, they're running the streets. Like, I don't want you with anybody. And if I was trying to do opposite, I was a whore and I was doing something wrong out there. And it was a physical altercation. Like, this is just what we were used to from almost like the first 6 months of our relationship. So I winded up getting pregnant and
So real
leaving my
quick.
mom's house when I was like 4.5 months pregnant
So
to live with
basic.
him.
So no, sorry. I just want to ask something real quick. So basically, like the way that, like, because your mom, like, she'd gotten saved, but there was still like a lot of craziness. You're still, for the first 5 years of your life, you're still seeing the guy that was her pimp. And it was, you know, she. So basically, like your upbringing, kind of some of the stuff you went through, really kind of, would you say it conditioned you to where you just kind of accepted this? This was kind of what you were used to, and so when it started happening, like it didn't really. I mean, it just seems like it didn't really, like, you didn't know different. Like you didn't know that, hey,
No,
this isn't healthy. Like it was like you were getting attention and that you hadn't been getting, and so you were just accepting it, not realizing that this
it
is
was
abusive.
unhealthy. It was
Right.
very
Okay.
unhealthy.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. I just kind of
No, it's
wanted to,
fine.
yeah. So
So, I moved in with him and his family. They lived in the suburbs. They were on the outside, they looked like a regular loving family. He had his mom and dad, and he would witness like stuff we went through in our house. So he's like, what kind of mom is she? And blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
And then it's like telling him the truth. It made him have ammo on my mom because these are people that were involved in witchcraft. They were involved in something. I don't know if you
Wow.
know that, but a lot of the deep Spanish culture, this is what their religion is. And it seems like a couple steps out of the way from Catholicism because they get possessed with demons and everything, and they act like it's a gift, like a spiritual
Wow.
gift or something. So my son's father was raised in that,
What's
and
that
that kind
called?
of controlled him. It's called Santeria.
Okay,
It's
that's what I thought.
a form of witchcraft.
Yeah, one of my friends, Raina, her family is from Mexico, and she talks
Yes,
about how that's what, that was a big part of her upbringing, her childhood. Wow.
yes, yes.
There's like
It's
some real angry, evil deity of that, right?
right. So when you talk to them, they'll say, "We believe in God and who Jesus is." Me and my 16-year-old self, well, this is idolatry because I know the word some. This is idolatry. Everybody would be angry if I was opposing them because why do you need to pray to Santa Barbara, Mary, archangels, this and that when Jesus is the only answer?
Wow.
What do you
So
need all this for?
so this is like blowing my mind kind of
Yeah,
because so your life is bananas, like it's crazy, like you grew up with this root of Jesus, like I think there was some authentic Jesus in your life from your mom in the midst of all
yeah,
the craziness, the chaos that she probably didn't know. She probably, it seems like she was really doing the best that she could or knew how, but her life was just crazy. And even, and you're getting into the like the religion you're talking about, like I've heard about it before, and it's
yeah.
definitely like demonic,
It
satanic,
is very
occult
demonic.
stuff. And but it's presented as like as Christianity. It's like presented as like part of Christianity. And so even though you can't recognize that you're in like an abusive relationship, that that you've been conditioned to go, hey, I need something, this is it. You're getting this counterfeit love. You still, Jesus still, it seems like God still had his hand on your life trying to
Yes,
get you through all this stuff, realizing, and I mean, you had just enough to realize, okay, this isn't true. You didn't see everything else was, but it seems like there's this, that God really had in the midst of all this, his hand in your life trying to get you somewhere other than where you were.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So with um with living with them, I felt like I was by myself in a house full of people that believe totally different.
Wow.
So I can see now my son's father is still trapped in that. I don't speak to him at all. It's been years. My son doesn't even speak to him. It's been years for him too. On my son's own accord. He just doesn't want to tolerate certain things, but it's almost like the devil has him in bondage.
Yeah.
And when you grow and mature, you forgive without the apology, you forgive how much somebody's hurt you and learn to just pray, Lord, open his eyes because he is what he is because he doesn't have you. So I would talk to him about stuff. And I remember telling him, this isn't right, this isn't right. He would get full on possessed by
Wow.
demons. And because he almost cost me my son's life. I had my son when I was 26 weeks pregnant. 2 days before I went into labor and they had to do an emergency C-section, he got possessed by a demon and was dragging me around by my hair.
Wow.
Um, I remember always praying to the Lord to protect me. And it's like, I don't know what's going on here, but I feel like I'm in a dark room by myself and everything is spooky. And I don't know what's going on, but this isn't right. So every time he would get possessed, I would go back and forth with his parents, like, this isn't right. And what you're praying over him, these demons are just laying dormant. you're not getting rid of them because nothing's changing. So it's almost like the demons in him was attacking me. That's the way it seemed.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, I always started to think like the devil was trying to kill my son without like without me knowing back then, because I would get scared. That day that happened, he ran outside. He was running through the yard like a thundercat, like a cat runs on his knuckles, like literally like a cat. I got terrified. We broke free. I ran in the room. I slammed the door. He was grabbing underneath the door. And I remember just praying, Lord, help me. I don't know what's going on. I'm scared. Take this fear away from me, because I know fear does not come from the Lord. When you have a spirit of fear in you, it's not godly. It's just not. So it's like, we're telling this because it seems whimsical to some people that would hear it, that don't have never witnessed it in their face. It seems like a fake movie. I will put it like that.
Yeah.
And there's times I tell people and I'm like, I couldn't make this up if I wanted to. Sounds crazy, don't it?
Well,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it happened. I'm not crazy.
So there's a lot of people that look at stuff like that and they're like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
when I look at the Bible, like, it tells us stuff like that happens, that it has happened.
Yeah.
Jesus and his disciples dealt with it. In the book of Acts, we see them still dealing with it. And it's not
Oh my
something that's
God.
gone away.
Yes.
Ephesians 6 says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, and spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly realms.
Yes.
Sometimes I think we're insulated to that stuff. We're not looking for it, but it's definitely, it's something that's there. And especially when you get into something where, like, the religion you're talking about, it's definitely something where you are intentionally opening yourself up to those demonic forces. You're basically saying,
Yes.
hey, I want this kind of stuff in my life. I mean, it's
Yes.
like you because in that religion, like, they recognize that they have an evil deity, like an evil, angry deity, and they're welcoming him into their life. And
Because they
so,
take it on as, they act like that's their spirit guide and it's a gift.
right.
So they light candles to dead people, which is like, what do they call it? Necromancy. Like,
Yeah.
And I would remember telling him, these dead people are not your family members. They're demons.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
People. This is
Yeah.
not God. If the Lord promises you heaven, if you accept him and you die and go to heaven, why would he come and visit you and see you in all your despair? You're
Wow.
never at peace then, if that's the sense. When you die, if you're saved and heaven is promised to you, I'll see you when you get here. I feel like it's
Yeah.
happening. Like, I'm good. I'll see you when you get here. Their time ain't like our time.
So,
Like,
okay, so let's go on. So this situation that you're in with this guy, like, how did you get out of that? Like, how did you get out of that situation to where you're
so
no longer with this guy, you're no longer living in his house, you're somewhere else?
okay, so when my son was born, he was 1 pound 13 ounces. He was in the hospital for 2.5 months. I remember telling him, if my son dies, I'm going to kill you. That's how like depressed I started to get, because I was so afraid. This person you feel inside of you, you start to love them before they're born.
Right.
So it's like, you're the reason he came too soon and he might die. My mom will go to the hospital and pray for him. I pray for him all the time. And the doctors were always astonished nothing was wrong with him, meaning blind, deaf, retardation, breathing issues. I mean, babies that are born that small, at 1 pound 13 ounces, normally have issues, like even cerebral palsy. Like they could be, they could wind up taking on a lot of issues. But God, I feel like, protected my son. My son is 24. He's going to be 25 in July. He's perfectly
Awesome.
fine. He's a pain in the neck, but that's how all sons are.
Yeah.
It is,
How,
but
it's
he's
how
a
all
good
kids are. I have 3 adult
kid.
children.
Good kid.
All they all are at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it took me till I was 21 to leave him fully.
Wow.
I would leave him and come back, leave him and come back, leave him and come back. And it was like getting older and more mature is like, I can't keep living dysfunctional, because I'm repeating the cycle of dysfunction our family has always suffered from my grandma to my mom. Now it's me. something has to change, and you have to own up to your own ignorance in certain things and know that you're making bad decisions and something has to change. Like, this is not right. So my son was almost 5, and I got into a big altercation with him. I winded up grabbing my son. I was like, I'm leaving, going to my mom's. My mom had winded up living like 6 minutes away from us at that time. We had moved out of the city. We were more in the suburbs. As I'm running out the house in flip-flops and shorts and a t-shirt, he throws a bag of trash at me while I'm running down the steps. It was at the top of the steps. I could see that he's getting possessed, because when he got possessed, those baby blues that man had, his pupils would get so dilated you couldn't see the blue anymore.
Wow.
Like, it was freaky. So I ran, jumped in my little car, spent $400. It took me forever to save, because this man didn't ever want me to evolve. He was mad when I got my GED. He was mad when I became a shift supervisor at Wendy's, because I'm trying to like do something for myself. At this time, I'm 21. So I jump in the car, throw my son in the back seat, and I'm trying to drive off, and he's out there barefoot in his underwears in a tank top. He punches my side mirror off, rips my windshield wipers off. He punches my other mirror off. And I'm like, you better get away from my car. I'm going to run you over. Mind you, he jumps on the hood of my car. I'm in hysterics. I'm rebuking him because I can see that he's possessed. I'm like screaming though. He punches my windshield 4 times, punches 4 holes in my windshield. Not a scar on that man. Not one scar. I take off, slam on the gas, slam on the brakes. I'm trying to knock him off my car. And I'm like, at that time, not realizing the anger in me was ready to run him over, because this is how upset I was getting. Like, you're terrorizing me. Like, I'm tired. My son's in the back seat, hysterical, crying. He's terrified. So 3 blocks later, I'm slamming the gas, slamming the brake. He hops off my car because I roll the window down and tell the neighbor, call the cops, he's trying to kill me. A guy that's outside cutting his grass. I drive off. I pull over because I'm crying. I had little shards of glass on me. My son tells me, Mommy, keep driving because Daddy's going to kill you. I looked at him and I'm like, oh, no, he's not, because this is not what's going to happen today. Like, no. I drive up to my mom's house. My mom's outside. She has an apartment. She's living there with my little sister. And I'm hysterical. She could see that the car's all busted up. She came up to the car. She grabbed my son. She said, are you okay? And I'm, I'm crying like that. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, you ready yet? You done? Or are you finished yet? Are you tired yet? And I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. Like, I can't do this no more. It was from that moment I never went back. And a couple times he tried to get back with me, and he's crying and he's sorry. And I started to feel like empathy for him, because it's like I really loved him and wanted a family, something I never had. I wanted my son to have his father. I wanted to have a normal family unit.
That's manipulation, right?
Like,
Like,
why are you so crazy?
Yeah. So he was basically trying to manipulate. So at that point, when he's doing that, was he trying to explain everything in a way where it was like your fault? Like, it wasn't really anything he did wrong, but like everything that had happened, it was really on you. Did he kind of try doing that?
He will own up to some of his stuff, but then it will be like, the way you talk to me makes me angry. It makes me act that way. And it's like, you're not going to call me out my name and accuse me of going to check the mail, and I'm trying to seduce men and doing that.
Right.
So you're calling me a whore at any chance you get, when I've never been that. He was actually at that time the only man I had ever been with.
Wow.
So it's like, I can't never get right for you and get past your insecurities. Right. I'm not doing anything. Why can't we just be a happy family and raise our son?
Right. Yeah, because he's manipulative and abusive, and that's like everything you've explained. Like, those are like really, it's what controlling men do, and he's trying to gaslight you and put this on you. And okay, I did this, but really it's not my fault. It's your fault. Like that's really, a tactic that abusive, controlling, people do in relationships. So you've left him now. I'm guessing that this is the time where like that relationship ended, and you didn't, because you said you didn't go back. So, what year was that?
That was in 2001, 2002,
Okay. So
2001.
okay. So you've got away from him. So now, like, kind of what happens? Like, when do you really start to see that, okay, like, because you're in a really bad situation. When does it
Yeah.
kind of change to where you're going, hey, I'm starting to like live for God? Because I know it was like back and forth. And at some point, you really, you know, are going, okay, I'm living for God now. Like, I'm following Jesus. Like, what kind of got you? Take me kind of through that to the point where you're going, okay, now I'm living for Jesus, and you actually met somebody that you married that's a good man.
Yes. So over the years, I think dating dating wrong people, kind of like still always feeling upset, crying out to God. I just want to be happy. I used to always pray, Lord, I just want to be happy. I don't need the best things in life. I just want to genuinely just be happy and have a man that just makes me happy. I don't think that's a horrible request. I'm not asking for a mansion. I'm not asking for a fancy car. I'm not asking for money. I don't care if we're struggling and living week to week and check to check. I just want to be happy. This is driving me crazy. And it's like you go through bouts of like depression because you feel like you just can't never get right. And like you keep making these same mistakes with men you're dating. So I went through them times dating the wrong men. I met my husband in 2006, and he wasn't the normal guy that I would go for. So in my rational mind, I started to feel like since I'm becoming a bad picker like my mom, right? I need to do opposite of what I'm used to choosing.
Awesome.
But at the time, mind you, at the time I was a single mom. I had started to get into the drug business with my cousins that were making money. So at that time, it was hard being a single mom. I never had money for stuff. So it's like I need to make money. I see you guys are drug dealers. You always got money. Clue me in because I need to make money to support our life. I don't really have no help here. His father doesn't really want to help. Like it just is what it is. So I got into that lifestyle, kind of just needing to provide for me and my son and not knowing no other way. Because at the time I had gotten my CDL and was driving a school bus, and you work part-time hours, and during the summer they lay you off. And when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, you don't get a choice to say you want to work to the for the summer. But their hours were like 20 hours a week. So being able to have to having to have to pay rent and normal bills and Walker's not wanting to help you too much because you actually have a job and this, that, and the third, it's kind of like, hmm, I don't know what other way to do it. I mean, they're making it. They're making thousands of dollars a week. You need to tag me in. I need to make money too. So my family being my family, my cousin was like, okay, well, you can't be out here on the streets because if something happens, I won't hear the end of it. So I'm going to teach you how to bag up drugs. And you could get paid to just bag up drugs. So that's what I was doing when I met my husband. And at the time, he was selling drugs somewhere else. So the weird thing is I never liked drug dealers because they were always in my family. I never liked drug dealers, period. I don't care how much money you flaunt and try to be the coolest guys on the planet. It's a turnoff and you're corny and you think you're somebody because of the money you're making and you're not. And there's never a humble drug dealer. It just is what it is. If there is, it's because they have an exit plan to get out, and that's rare. Nobody's retired. Nobody's this 80-year-old retired drug dealer and life was grand. No, this doesn't happen in life. So it's like, well, I don't have no room to judge. But it's weird because me and him are connecting and not for sexual desires or reasons that were off. We were just really good friends and we talked and understood each other. And it was like, he's not even trying to get me in the room and he's not even trying to like most men in the streets, they just want to sleep with you. He's not even trying to do all that. He's like actually getting to know me. And I remember when he finally met my mom's like, I don't know about him, he looks like a crackhead. And I'm like, Mom, no offense, but your judgment in men has never been okay. It's always been wrong. You've never picked not one good man in your life to this day. So there's something that we have, and I can't understand it, but it's weird how he was raised in church too, and church hurt his family. So we kind of had that mutual thing, like, Dad, for real, like that happened at your family's church, and their whole family actually got kicked out of a church for
Wow.
speaking up for things. And it's like it turned a lot of their family wayward to serving the Lord because church hurt them, and they took it as, well, what's real here? If the elders of the family were allowing this and didn't see it, if they were such God-fearing, Bible-reading people, right? So we had that in common from the beginning. And eventually him wanting to, us being in a relationship, it's like, well, this has to end if we want to have a sense of normalcy. So if you want
What,
to have a normal
what has
family,
to end?
this lifestyle,
Okay.
our lifestyle in a whole had to end. And the weird thing was it was ending on its own because where everything was going on that got indicted, that area got indicted. So my cousins weren't dumb. It's kind of like we're going to have a run for this amount of time and we're just going to stop because this is how you don't get caught. So you go, you don't be greedy. You go for a stretch, 9 months to a year, you stop. Dead in the tracks, stop everything. Everybody always kept normal jobs, so money was accounted for. It's like, they were more like, this isn't supposed to be a forever thing. So we're gonna do what we're gonna do to make this money and stop and keep, you're supposed to flip it and do something legal with it, which you're supposed to do, but most people don't. But anyway, so that stopped because I'm like, to have a normal life, looking over your shoulder, being afraid to get pulled over, it doesn't feel good. And you're never at peace, never. So I remember in our craziness, we were bagging up drugs because my husband came on to be with us because he wasn't on the street. We were in the house. So it was actually more safer being in the house. And we had a bad reaction, all of us, to the two chemicals that were in the different kinds of heroin we mixed together. And my husband started to have, at the time, he's my boyfriend. He started to have a lot of chest pain and he couldn't breathe. And at the time, he was like disgruntled towards the whole church thing because of his family being hurt by church. So he's like, he can't breathe. And I'm like, I was feeling a little off, like sick. But it was from smelling what was in the air. It was the two different chemicals these two things were mixed with was causing a bad chemical reaction and making us feel sick. So he's like, call my aunt so she could pray for me. And I'm like, she's praying to Jesus. So if you believe she can heal you, you can pray for yourself as well. So he's just like, kind of like afraid because he thought he was having a heart attack at this time. Like he was scared. So I said, in the room, go get on your knees and pray to the Lord. Ask for forgiveness. Ask the Lord to show you who he is and ask him to help you. We can't just go to the hospital. What are we going to say? We were bagging up drugs and he got sick. We're going to all get locked up. We can't, like, now we're all nervous at this point. Like, what are we going to do? So my husband, he does that and he started to feel better, but he started to have anxiety every time he started to smoke weed. That's what was weird. So he used to smoke a lot of weed. We all did. After that, it was like, as soon as he would smoke weed, super anxiety attack. He couldn't even smoke weed anymore. So it was like, that was over. The block got indicted. That was over. I went back to driving a school bus. I actually went back to working for senior care, picking up the seniors. That was like an adult daycare center. We had moved a couple of times, but wound up getting an apartment and he had got a regular. I told him after the drugs, it's like, as long as you're trying to look for a normal job, I don't care where you work. You can work at McDonald's as long as you're trying. Everything, all this, we both were in agreement and had to stop. So he started working for temp services. That only lasted a few months. He wound up landing a decent job, which he was at before we moved to PA last year. He was there for 13 years. So it was a union job, a warehouse job. Really proud of him. He actually would, it was times when, when I had my second son, which was his first son, he held the household down on his back, always gave everything for his family. Like, this is just the way he is. So he winded up, a coworker of his was witnessing to him about the church he went to.
First Baptist. And he was like, I want to go visit. We should go visit. I said, maybe you should go visit because as the man of our family, you have to take the lead. So I want to see how you feel by yourself. I don't want me to hold your hand through it. That was my logic in my head.
Okay.
I want you to go, and spiritually, I want you to tell me if this feels sound to you. He went, he was like, man, I like it, like the way they're preaching. I love the way the pastor preaches. He's straight out the word. He went like 3 times without me.
Yeah.
I wound up going. We wound up rededicating our life to the Lord. He got baptized. We took new member classes, and we decided he proposed to me. And my pastor said, basically, you have to do marital counseling classes, and we did that. And the church, my pastor's like, yeah, I'll marry you. If I'm led by the Spirit too, I will. He said, I'm just kind of like scripturally, like, I won't marry people that are unequally yoked. So if he feels like, it almost seemed like if he felt like if this wasn't the Holy Spirit guiding him to do it, he wasn't going to do it. But what the pastor does is whatever he does it and doesn't charge you, doesn't none of that. He does what he does. So the church, no, there's no charge. We'll actually decorate. We'll do everything. Don't worry about it. My mom was so ecstatic. My mom, listen, my husband could do no wrong. That's her son that she never had. You're crazy. Leave him alone. This was my mom. Leave him alone. Stop being the way you are, because we all have our crazy way. My mom loved my husband. So it was a proud moment. We got married, and the pastor's like, listen, during the ceremony, if everybody's not here all the time, we're closing the doors, because this is a union between you, him, and the Lord. Like, you're not going to, people ain't just be walking in. They ain't here all the time. They ain't getting in. This is, and it was such a small, intimate ceremony, but it felt right. And it's weird because financially, we live week to week. We rented an apartment, but we were happy. So over the years, I always prayed, Lord, I don't know how this could happen, but help me figure out who my dad is. I always would pray that. And I would go months forgetting it and reminding, like, heck, when I would see something, it'd be like, Lord, help me find him. Like, I know it seems like such a hard request because he don't even know that I exist.
So
This
that's
is a one thing.
so he didn't know. So the guy that was your father didn't even know your mom had been pregnant.
No.
So he's oblivious to you, but that's something that it seems like it had always been like missing from your life, that you just, what you're saying is basically you kept longing for your
Yeah.
dad. Your mom doesn't know who he is. You
Nope.
don't know who he is. You have no way to find out who he is unless God like steps in and actually does something.
Yeah.
Wow. So
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 mind you,
you're getting your life together at this point. Like you're going, okay, I want God, you've gone through all this stuff. God's you've got kind of got your life together. You're in church, your life has changed, but you're still going, I just wish I knew my dad. I wish I had him in my life. Wow.
yeah, just to kind of like,
So
it feels like a part of you is missing when you don't know what the other half is. Medically, I can't even answer questions when they ask, does this run in your family? Does that? I know
right.
it runs in my mom's. I don't even know what I'm mixed with.
So
This was a one night thing
so
with a stranger, and you never seen them again. So
so
there is no answer. Like,
your dad, was he one of the guys that had visited your mom while she was a prostitute?
my older sister basically thinks that because the way they used to do things, he had a harem of women.
Okay.
So in the business of having that, if you're having business meetings, sometimes who's hosting would pay for women to come entertain the men. So it's like, if you're hosting a group of businessmen from out of the country or from wherever they are, my dad's from out of the country, these women come and entertain you. So it's like,
believe he doesn't remember it all, but he said I never intentionally solicited a prostitute. And
Okay.
my sister was like, he probably didn't because that's the way they used to operate.
Okay.
Who's hosting solicited it and paid for everything to entertain these men.
Because you do end up finding out who your dad was. So
Yeah.
so the way that you came about was your mom was with the group of women that had gone to entertain some men at a business
Yeah.
meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So she told me that part. She said she met him. They were at the bar. She said it was a bunch of men, that it was a big business situation down there at a fancy hotel. And she said they sparked conversation, and it's kind of like one thing led to another. They went upstairs and did what they did. And she said he walked her to the elevator, and it was just like, all right, well, I had a good time. See you later.
okay.
That was it.
Okay. All right. So how did you end up finding your dad? Because yeah, so take us through that. And then not just that, but like how that affected your life to actually find your dad and connect with him. And how did he feel about finding out, oh my gosh, I've got a daughter that I didn't know about?
Um, okay, so my mom passed away in January 2014.
Oh, I'm so
Um,
sorry.
she 2013 she was diagnosed with stage 4 endometrial cancer.
Wow.
So she gave it a good fight. Um,
Was she still walking with Jesus at that point?
yes. And
Okay.
at that time it was a little more, y'all, look, my mom had individual talks with everybody, and it was kind of like my mom had apologized again for how much she's hurt me over the years, and I'm not leaving this earth with a dirty slate because ain't nothing interfering with my way to heaven. So I'm gonna undo my wrongs. If I still got some left over there, I'm gonna do that. And you know, she did that, and I remember buying her a book. I don't know if you read it. It's by an author called Kat Kerr. So the book is called Revealing Heaven. And
No.
when she was sick, she already knew it was kind of like terminal. She lived with us. And I'm like, Mom, I heard about this book, and I want you to pray about it and tell me what you think. Because she had a really strong spirit of discernment. Like my mom could spot a bad friend, a bad guy. Like we were just like, oh, you're just bugging. She was always right. So when people always act like their mom was always right, she was that mom that was always right about friends that were bad influences, about men that weren't good choices. Like
But
for
she
the
picked
most
him
part,
anyways.
she was on point with certain things. So I bought this book. I ordered it on Amazon. She read it. She was like, I prayed about this book before I read it. And it really touched my heart because of what they're explaining. I've had dreams of how heaven looked. And she's like, I always felt like they're just dreams and kind of bypassed it. But it's weird. The way the ladies explaining certain things stick out to me because I remember certain things from a dream. So I'm like, really, Ma? And she's like, well, now it's weird because I can't wait till I'm there. And I'm just like, it hurt my feelings her saying that because it's like, what about us? What do you mean? You can't wait till you're there? You're just gonna leave us behind? Like that can't happen. You're our only parent. Like, so I remember her saying it kind of comforted her in a sense that she can't wait to be with her Heavenly Father. She couldn't wait. And she gave us written directives. Do not resuscitate. If anything happens, let me go be on with the Lord. Like that's just that. So January 19th was the day she passed in 2014. The day, fast forward, we had to take her off life support, and I was at peace with that because I know that that was her choice. My mom did not want to be lingering around, and she's like, go on and let me be with the Lord. If this is it, this is it. Now, when that happened, I started to go to, it's almost weird. I don't think people get mourning in a weird way can take you to a dark place when you lose people, especially when you're just angry that God took them. So in my mind, I'm like, Lord, I prayed for you to heal her. I had faith you would heal her, and you took my mom. She's my only parent. You start to feel like an orphan. Who do I have?
who's gonna boss me around and tell me when I'm wrong? And she's the only one that could say it. And you know, when you're mad at your parent, it's like you can't stay mad at them forever. They're your parent. Like you're just gonna have to get over it. She was the one to always make sure she tell you something, whether you want to hear it or not. And you always gotta come crawling back. Yeah, she would call you like nothing ever happened. And they'd be like, all right, mom, like whatever, you know, like so it was like, what am I supposed to do? I don't have nobody. This isn't fair. Why can't stuff just why would you take her? She was 59. So it's like,
Wow.
this isn't fair. Fast forward, you realize the Lord's timing ain't our timing. How is it not fair? And how selfish people be when they want their people with them instead of them going on to glory, which is our final destination, our everlasting life, what the Lord promises us. How can we act like we're so upset when there's somewhere where eventually we all aspire to be, right?
You know, and one of the things it talks about in Second Corinthians a lot is suffering. Like Second Corinthians deals extensively with suffering, you know, and one of the
Yeah.
things that it says at the end of chapter 4, it says, you know, we don't look at the things that we can see, but we focus on the things that we can't see, because what we can see is only temporary, but what we can't see is eternal. And that whole section of scripture really addresses how it's easy for us to look at what's going on in our life and to wallow in grief and suffering and misery, but it's telling us, hey, it uses this phrase. It says our light affliction is but for a moment. And the apostle Paul wrote that he went through substantial suffering, like his entire ministry from the time he got saved and started following Jesus. His life was just full of suffering for the sake of the gospel. It led him to
Yeah.
constantly be persecuted and tortured. And he said that's nothing. He said that is this little tiny, insignificant, inconsequential thing because of the eternal hope that I have. And one of the things, like he told, I love that he told the church in Colossae at the beginning. He says I've heard of your he hadn't been there, and he says I've heard of your faith and your love because of your hope. He actually says that like this hope that they have is what gives them the ability to have the faith and the love that they do. And for us, that's so important as Christians, that we have this eternal hope. This life is not all that there is. And I love at the end of Revelation when, you know, we're in heaven with God for eternity, and it says that there's going to be no more sorrow or pain or death or suffering. God will wipe away every tear from our eyes because those former things have passed away. And it's so easy to, you know, live in America. You know, so many people, they're not going, you know, they haven't been through the kind of grief and the kind of struggle that you have. You know, but so many people have, and all over this world, people are going through the kinds of things that you went through. Like there's a lot of people, I mean, if you're in America, you know, the poorest people in America are in like some of the wealthiest people in the world, which is really crazy to think about, because when you look at poverty in America, it's not like poverty anywhere else. You know, people who are in, you know, who are well off in some other third world countries, they don't have it as good as some people that are in poverty in America do. But
Yeah.
it's so easy for us to get focused on when things are hard and to get really down. But you know, I don't know why I went off on that soliloquy there about suffering all over the world, but you know, it's that eternal hope that we have of heaven. You know, I know that the stuff that I've gone through, it's really helped me to go, okay, you know, it's all is not lost, and it's really brought me a lot of encouragement through the times that I have suffered.
Yes. It's always in the suffering parts that God always spins things and turns it for good. It's weird. And you don't see it in your despair. At that moment, you're just kind of like, so I can see how people get lost in mourning for people, and they go down to a place. I think my mom used to always say, weeping comes for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Like you're not supposed to, it almost seems like you're not supposed to allow that mourning to consume you. And I see why, because people start to idolize dead people, act like these dead people are their guardian angels. I remember correcting people like, my mom is not my guardian angel.
Yeah.
She was born a human being.
Yeah.
She's in heaven. I don't need her watching me and all my
Humans
shenanigans.
never become angels. That is,
No.
yeah.
So it's like, no, she's not. She's
Right.
she's where what was promised to her.
Yeah. So
So
let's get to because we're running low on time. So let's
okay.
get to how you actually connected with your dad, and like how your life was kind of changed since that point.
All right. So I'll try to speed it up. So
No,
2008.
this is really good. Like I'm really enjoying hearing your story. And I keep listening to what you're saying, and I'm seeing this, this thread of like God is getting you out of where you were from just craziness
Yeah.
and getting you somewhere better.
So 2018 Black Friday, they advertised Ancestry DNA kits on TV. So I've seen them advertise this on
Okay.
TV before.
If you watch
Um,
TV, you've heard of Ancestry and
right.
21andMe and all the DNA testing and stuff.
Yes.
That's super trendy.
Yes. So I'm looking, I'll see it on TV and be like, oh yeah, that's cool, man. I should get that one day. The thought will always leave my mind that fast. That day, I'm like, they're advertising it, buy one, get one half off. So my husband's like, well, get it, just get it. And I'm like, yeah, it's on sale. We'll get one for both of us. At least I'll know what I'm mixed with. So it's like, I don't know who's going to pop up on there to any relation, but I'll know what my genealogy is. I'll know what I'm mixed with. My mom's Puerto Rican, so I'll know what else the rest is, because they tell you by percentage what you are. So boom, Black Friday, order the kits. They come in around right before Christmas. They come in like a week later. We send it in, you send in your saliva. I got the results around Christmas time, and a half sister popped up on there in Australia. So at this time, I'm like,
Wow.
oh man, somebody actually popped up this much of close relation. So at first it said close relation dash first cousin. So I'm like, okay, if she's my first cousin, one of her uncles is my dad. So that's close enough to start snooping, messaging people. I wound up calling Ancestry. What does this mean by how many centimorgans we share across certain strands of DNA? We had a lot. And they were like, this is either your grandparent or your half sibling or a double aunt, like an aunt from mom and dad's side. It's
Okay.
just weird. But they're like, so more or less, she's your half sister. So I remember reaching out to my sister and telling her about it, and then reaching out to her again and saying, well, I actually think you're my sister. And she said, I was aware of that. My dad was alive. He's healthy. He's actually on holiday. That's what they call it out there.
Okay.
When he gets back into town, I'm going to invite him over because I don't want to tell him this over the phone. So she asked for pictures of me, pictures of my mom. She kind of asked, how did this come about and what happened? I didn't get into the part of the prostitution thing because she had said kind of like her and their mom and him had divorced 30 years prior because he was a cheater. So I'm like, I'm not trying to get all in their family stuff. Listen,
Right.
I even understand if he doesn't want anything to do with me. I just want to know what he looks like. And I want him to know that he has a daughter. That's it. So I sent her screenshots of pictures of me from when I was a baby to, adulthood, my kids, my mom, when she was around the time of conception. And she was like, well, when he gets here, I'll let him know. I'll show him everything. So when that day came, I already knew he was going to come over. She had messaged me and she said, he's a little beside himself. He didn't know this at all, which I already knew that.
How old were you at the time?
Huh?
How old were you at the time?
This was 3 years ago.
Okay.
So she said, I gave him all your information. He'll be reaching out to you. Just give him some time. He's a really stand-up guy, and I know he wants to do the right thing. That's pretty much all she said. So it took him a week, but on the day that made 5 years my mother was gone is when he reached out to me.
Okay.
January 19th. His time was January 20th, but my time was January 19th. I received the email, him introducing himself. I'm her father.
She showed me everything before what we could go down, which would be an emotional hot path. Would you be up to taking a DNA test to be certain? So I'm like, yeah, that's fine. If you want, I'll pay for half the charges. I want to be certain too. She didn't tell me his name or who he was, but we started to get on the investigation station on all social media platforms. I wound up seeing a picture of him and his brother, and I'm like, it's him. I know it's him. And I actually picked the right one because I look like him. So it's weird. So he sends a DNA test. It takes 5 days to get to my house from Australia. That's actually pretty fast. I do the swab, I send it back, it comes back. He's my father. We set up a video chat, and he was really nervous, and so was I. And I'm like, listen, I'm nothing like your daughters, because I have 2 sisters with him. I'm the oldest. I'm actually his first kid. I said,
Wow.
yeah. So I said, if you're willing to get to know me, I'll give you what I gave my mom, and that's sheer honesty. I just don't want to be judged, and I don't want you to feel bad because you didn't know about me. And there's things you're going to learn along the way that's going to bother you, but I'm okay. Like, I'm okay. Like, in life, I'm okay right now. I'm not going crazy. I'm not in the crazy house. I'm not. It's almost weird that I had a dream 3 years prior that I met my dad. And I woke up and I remember I screenshot it because I posted it on Facebook. I had the craziest dream. I met my dad. That's weird. Not thinking I was going to meet him because that time hadn't come yet. So we video chatted. And that's just like, I just want to get to know who you are. Get to know the man that you are. Not the businessman, because he's well off. Not anything else, who you are. Like, I know my mom. I feel like as a parent, I just want to get to know who you are. So at that time where we was living was just like, the crime rate was getting really crazy. And me and my husband were kind of like, we need to get out of here. When the pandemic, well, he came back here for my birthday with my sisters to meet me in person. We had a great time. We just hung out, had dinner. We even had a day that it was just me and him. We spent the whole day together, just me and him. And it was like I could just enjoy him as the person he was. And I told him, I don't want you to feel bad about the circumstance, because the way I was raised, there's no judgment here. Nobody's perfect. And you cheated on your wife, you did this and that. Look, I don't care about that, because I wouldn't be here if you didn't. Let's be realistic. And number one, number two, like, I don't have nothing to do with that. That's your issue you have to bear with your kids over there. Like, that has nothing to do with me, but
Right.
I'm not judging for it. Who I've been around in my life, that's nothing compared to what I've witnessed in my life.
Right.
Because you're a cheater, it's wrong, but it's like what I've witnessed in my time, that was everybody's dad for the most part. It was only, I could count on one hand good men that I've actually witnessed in my life. So he came down, met all of us as a family for my birthday in October. The pandemic had hit that year, 2019 going into 2020. None of us were out of work. Me and my husband had kind of was like, we got to get out of here. A girlfriend of mine lives in this neighborhood. We kind of started to pray, like, Lord, if it's your will, open the doors for us to go, and we'll go. I didn't take that prayer as seriously as I thought it was going to happen. That's what's funny. It's kind of like, yeah, well, if God makes a way, he makes a way. But if not, we have a place to live, right?
Right.
We have a home, but we were in a safe environment. My kids couldn't play outside without being
Right.
watched. They were shooting. It was a shooting of this guy that kind of tipped me off 4 blocks away, right at the corner store we would go to sometimes in the Rita's Water Ice. They chased him and gunned him down at 3:00 in the
Wow.
afternoon. And like, I heard these gunshots from my porch. I can't keep doing this. I'm getting too old for this. And if I didn't have kids, it would be normal for me. I wouldn't care. But for my kids,
We always want better for our kids than what we have for
right?
ourselves.
Like, I don't
We
want.
can get used to crummy situations, but we always
Yes.
want, if you love your kids, you want better for them. Even terrible parents a lot of times want better for their kids.
Yes.
Not saying you were terrible.
Right.
Not implying that at all.
Right.
Right.
I used to have in my mind, if your kids' lives is better than your life, you've done something right.
Yeah.
You don't have all the answers. Parenting doesn't come with a manual. I was a mom at 16, and I've had to
Yeah.
cry and apologize to my son for him going through the rocky road of
Right.
life with me. There's
So
not a
you're
manual. Like,
so
it's just
right. So you guys are in a spot where, it's not the best place to like raise your kids. You got a roof over your head, utilities, food, clothes, things like that. But you want something better. So you're you kind of prayed, hey, God, if you can get us out of here, we want to get out of here. And so like what happens?
so. At the time, my girlfriend who lives out here is like, I've been out here for 8 years. Just come out here, find a job. So I was like, you know what? We used to go visit her for the summer for here and there. It's only an hour and a half away from the neighborhood we grew up in. So it's like, it's peaceful and beautiful out here. Like, it's quiet. You're kind of like up mountain a little bit. And it's just like, this is so nice. Like, the stars even look brighter here. It's weird. So we prayed about it, realized that my godbrother's a good friend of his was an HR manager at a big distribution place out here. So it's like, all right, well, if we get jobs, we'll go, right? If these doors open, we gonna go through them. So at the same time, we're saving our money from the pandemic money. We're fixing our credit up, and my dad's aware like of what's going on. I talk to him on a weekly basis. Still to this day, we video chat every week, talk trash, we joke around a lot. So he's all like, well, that's good, if you could get out of there, because you could tell it was like bothering him a little bit too. Like,
Yeah.
what is going on over there? He's not used to that life at all. And it's just like, Dad, you don't understand, whatever. So we apply, my husband applies for the job, gets an interview this fast because he has the warehouse experience he has, doing all the forklifts, doing all that stuff. He's been there for 13 years where he was. They hired him like this. It was getting paid a little bit more what he was getting paid in Jersey. So she was like, my girlfriend, look, if you get a job, you could just stay here until you get a place. And I'm like, oh, no, I haven't lived with nobody and God knows how long. Like, that's just weird. It's going to make me feel displaced. But I'm like, Lord, you're opening these doors. I had applied for a job there and got hired. I didn't have no warehouse experience. I just had CDL experience, but the CDL I did, PA doesn't pay as much as New Jersey paid for drivers. So I'm like, I'm not going to backtrack and get paid $3 less an hour for what I do here. But that place wound up hiring me as well. So we drove out there for our interviews, gave our jobs our 2-week notice, packed up our house. She has a living basement that's like a family room, big den area. Y'all stay down there. I'll move upstairs with the kids. So before we moved, we had our jobs. We had our apartment that was available January 8th. We moved the second week of November. So we just had to stay with her until January 8th. Our apartment was available. Security, first month's rent paid for, everything. Our credit was already getting better. Everything was cool. So boom, we move out here. We actually saved more money because that job had mandatory hours. And it made me and my husband get really close because it was like, we don't have family to lean on, to talk trash with. We just got each other.
Yeah.
And we found it extremely big. So it's like, it's so weird when it starts to dawn on you, like, wow, the Lord's really, we prayed for it and the doors blew open. It would have been like dumb to not walk through them. Like, wait a minute, this is happening. So everybody's in Jersey's like, man, you're crazy. Like, you're really just going to go up there? And I'm like, why not? Why not? What's out here that's keeping people here? Nothing but doom and gloom. That's it. Like, I don't want my kids to be subject to the streets when they get older, because that's all that seems to be the popular thing here. So we move out here, we work our jobs, we're working so much mandatory, we're working 6 days a week. We're not even spending money really. We gave my girlfriend what we gave her every week to stay there. Me and her are like this. She's been my friend for about 20 years. So it's kind of like, we get our apartment. It's like, man, we're here. Like, we're really like here. We got up and really moved, and nothing stood in our way. So I started to go to get a pre-approval for a house because our credit was good. My dad, I'm telling him what's going on along the way. We talk every week, and he's just like,
Right.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. He's not telling me anything. So in that process, he's like, well, listen, I want you and your husband and the kids to be able to afford to live in a neighborhood based off your wage. So what we were used to was what we were used to in Jersey. Nothing was really different. But I want you to live in a neighborhood that the school system is good, because that's how your kids have a better chance. Period. It boils down to being in a district. You're in a good school system. They're in a better neighborhood. They don't know this crazy life. They're raised with a sense of like normalcy in a way.
Right.
He's like, so in doing your stuff, let them know that I'm gifting you $140,000. And I said $140,000. He said $140,000, no ifs, ands, or buts. And I'm like, Dad, that's too much money. Like that's a lot. I knew he was going to help with something, but it's like, I'm assuming in my mind, like $10,000. What are you doing that you, from me not really grasping his occupation, the boss that he owns corporations, for me not really getting into it with him, I don't really understand what this man has to himself. He's a very regular guy. He doesn't flaunt anything. He's pretty, all he cares about is rugby and golf and food. It's like, that's his life. So it's like, 140, what? That whole day at work, I messed up the whole shift. I was just like, wow. I don't even know.
Just surreal, huh?
Who just has, he said, well, I've done the same thing for our kids, and you're my daughter now, and I'm going to do the same for you. So there is no ifs, ands, or buts. It's not favoritism. It's not because we're new to each other. You're my daughter, and I've done this for our other kids.
Wow.
That I'm allotting the same thing for you. So with him doing that, we were able to get this home in this neighborhood that I know my neighbors are wondering, how the heck did these people get here? Because we look shady, and we're not. So it's kind of like half of our home is paid off.
Wow.
Half of our home is paid off. That our mortgage is what our rent was in New Jersey, kind of.
And
so
having
afford a beautiful big home in a school district that's awesome based off of our wage. What my dad's mindset was, he's a businessman, so
yeah,
he's kind of like a few steps ahead of us. We're normal blue collar folk. He's kind of like, no, this is what I'm going to do because you'll be able to afford what you do. And if anything happens, it's a big deal. You let me know, we'll help you out. And I'm kind of like, I don't want nothing else from you, old man.
Wow.
Listen,
And so putting
putting
that much money down too, that would have, because you're putting down such a huge percentage of the cost of the house, that would have got you a much better interest rate, didn't it? And so that, when you talk about, something that's, over 15 or 30 years, dropping your interest rate even by like a quarter of a point, like that would substantially lower like what your monthly payment is. I mean, that could save you a couple of $100 a month. Wow.
Yeah. So he was like, well, I'm sure when he first dropped this bomb on me of that much money, well, I'm sure that'll make them roll the red carpet out for you when you go to get a house. And I'm like, nah, like, our realtor was always available 9 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock at night. Like, listen, you want to see a house? Let's go. Because we had got the pre-approval, a second pre-approval based off of that.
Right.
So it was like the finance guy was like, look, 20,000 to go towards your closing costs, 120 towards the house. You don't have to worry about nothing.
Yeah.
So we're house shopping, we're praying, we're house shopping. Lord, what should we do? What should we do? This house we bought is like 5 blocks away from my girlfriend that we were staying at.
Yeah.
And she moved down here. She moved in her house based off of the school district. That was her thing because she's
wow.
Yeah. So she's like, I researched the school district is the bomb. Like,
so your kids were already going to the school that they're at after you bought the house. So you were already you had already gone like, hey, we like this school district.
Yeah. So
wow.
My little one was in a different elementary school because of where the apartment was. My 13-year-old was in the regular middle school he's in now. So we didn't have to change anything with him. My 8-year-old had to go to their school is 3 blocks away. They walk home from school. Wow. So it's like, and the neighborhood is the typical, everybody's walking their dog and they're, hey, good morning. And that's not even stuff I'm used to. Like, hey, like, why is everybody saying good morning? It's like checking yourself, like, stop.
Wow.
Stop getting this nasty New Jersey way that people have the perception of us. It's kind of like your face doesn't really match what you really feel inside. We always got the resting face, and
And it's like, I don't want to be that way. So the weird thing is I feel like the Lord allowed the time for me to find my dad when I started to heal from losing my mom. It was 5 years to the day. And my dad, now I pray for his salvation because
Yeah.
it's kind of weird to talk to people that are well off because they feel like what they've done in life is absolutely fine. So now I pray for his salvation and their whole family, and they're really sweet. Like they're so different. Even just like hearing their accent is just like, this is really my life. And like my cousins are like, yo, they're like,
Yeah.
they're from New Zealand. They're originally all from New Zealand. So, you know, my dad's really proud of that. And
It's a
his
place I've
grand,
always wanted to go is to New Zealand.
yes. So the pandemic, he's kind of like, it bothers him that he hasn't been able to come down here
Yeah.
because Australia's laws are really strict.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They have probably some of the most restrictive like quarantining
Yeah.
rules, like laws in the world. Like they're really, really trying to keep the bad juju out of their country.
And it's been working because he's still a citizen in New Zealand. He hasn't been allowed to go back because of how strict their policies are.
Yeah.
But New Zealand don't have nothing really going on over there.
Wow.
Not since this thing really blew up. So
Wow.
they doing something right.
So so basically your life is you went from this really just tough, tough spot. You had a mom that loved Jesus, made mistakes, didn't do everything right, but had a genuine relationship with God, loved Jesus, and that got passed on to you. And even though you made mistakes, you held
Right.
on to that and finally went, okay, I need this Jesus thing, got onto it, and now God is really just, I don't want to say that following God, we're always going to be like, financially well off and because it doesn't always lead to that, but God's really went as it looks like as you've gone back to God and gone, this is, I want you, that he has kind of blessed you. Um, wow.
In weird ways because I always find it weird in my mind. I think a lot. I'm always in my head and I'm like, my dad doesn't even serve the Lord.
Yeah.
And look how much of a blessing he's been. And he's not a very emotional person, but you could tell he said stuff like, I'm really happy you're a part of my life. And I'm like, I feel like
Wow.
I came in and kind of like shook some things up because I know this has caused little issues within him and my siblings.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, they
Yeah.
were probably hurt by things. I stay out of it because I'm like, I'm not gonna touch that unless they talk about it. I'll talk about stuff, but me and him are really cool. Like he's a really
Good.
cool
That's
dude, and
awesome.
his life is even interesting. And his
So
dad, like, his grandpa
yeah.
played rugby for the All Blacks. So when they had a tournament here in Virginia, he's like, "It's your duty as a part of this family." And I'm like, "All right, Pop, I
Nice.
got it. We go." And then we went, and it was like,
Yeah.
this is dope. Like it was cool.
Awesome.
So
Well, we've got to wrap things up. So, is there anything else you want to say or tell the listeners before we go?
I would say that we're not promised this easy street. Life is never, Jesus didn't promise us that. Like, that's not in the Bible. Oh, life's going to be easy because you serve me and that's it. His love is his love. And the weird thing is when you go through your bumps in the road, when you're truly serving the Lord, there's no comfort that replaces that. Even in your sorrows, your sadnesses, your bumps, your confusion, because sometimes you have to just allow God to lead you blindly. Like, Lord, what do you want me to do? What are we gonna do? That's a scary thing for people that like to be in control. So it's like ultimately, Jesus is not religion, he is relationship. No matter what church you went to, and no matter what people have hurt you, that is not God hurting you. That's people, that's man. And this has been going on since Bible time. So it's like
Yep.
not understanding that Jesus having a relationship with the living God, our Father, is truly remarkable, and he's real and he's alive. And I think people don't really see it that way, but they need to give it a chance, because if they truly gave it a chance, they will see it. Things will start moving in your life, And that is what it is. So it's like, it's been weird to really talk about this. I'm not going to lie, because this is stuff a lot of people don't know. I
Yeah.
don't like to feel like people are talking bad about my mom or the things, because it's like things were crazy. And even now, talking about my dad, he made mistakes. He's human. You know, I don't hold that against him. So who's anybody else to? That's how I feel. Like he's you know, he is who he is. But you know, I wouldn't know where I would be without truly serving the Lord and trying to follow the Lord. And so now, making a point, when I wake up in the morning, I won't touch my phone. I'll start reading the word. The book of Acts, is funny you mentioned that, because I will tell my husband comes to work third shift. I'm like, babe, the way the Holy Spirit was working in the book of Acts, what's going on with church? They're bugging right now, some of these churches, because the way they was doing in the book of Acts, like a whole husband and wife dropped dead because they were lying, basically. Like this is crazy. So
Yeah.
it's like, it becomes like a living story that's not, it's not even like a regular book you read. It really
Yeah.
comes alive when you allow the Holy Spirit to guide you in it. So,
Yep.
you know, I think people don't understand that. And a lot of people say, well, I was lucky you found your dad. That was luck you this. That was luck you that. It wasn't luck that the Lord saved my son's life. It wasn't luck that I never lost my life out there in them streets. And it wasn't luck that I found my father. That was the timing it was. You can't tell me that man messaging me 5 years to the day my mom passed is not odd.
Awesome.
I
I,
almost
I,
started to feel like, God, really? Wow. You know, so
Yeah. Well, Tyya, I really appreciate you being on here with me today and sharing your story. I think it will help a lot of people. I think God's really showed up in your life, and because there's a lot of people that are church hurt and walk away. They're hurt by people and then associate it with God, and they're like, well, where's God? And they don't realize that people suck. We absolutely do. We make mistakes. God is faithful no matter what, even when people are not. People will always disappoint us, leave us broken and hurting. God
yes.
never will. He's always there. We just got to look for him, and he will always come, into our life when we need him. So just thank you so much for being on here today. This is
Thanks for
the
having me.
Crazy God Story podcast. It's available
Yes.
on I almost said Hulu. It is not available on Hulu. It's available on Spotify. They both have like green. It's available on Spotify, Anchor Podcast. It's available on Apple and on YouTube, where it's completely free. There's no charge on any of those platforms for it. It is on Patreon. You can find me there. That is a subscription-based service. It's the same podcast. The only thing different there is you get merchandise for subscribing. If you want to support the ministry that I'm doing, you can sign up there. I've got a book, Crazy God Story, Faith Isn't Blind. I used to run a nonprofit mechanic company. My full-time job was fixing cars for broke people for free. I never got a paycheck or asked anyone for money, and God showed up in my life in crazy, amazing ways. I kept a journal, turned it into a book. The second half of the second third of the book just kind of goes into what it looks like from going to try and figure out how to do Jesus, how to do Christianity, to getting to a point in your life where living by faith and following Jesus is as natural as breathing. Like I said, it's on Amazon, or you can get a free PDF copy at crazygodstory.com. Thanks so much
Yes.
for being here, and everybody have a great rest of your day.